So today we're going to teach you how to make CaboPatch, also known as Bondo. And the reason it's called Bondo is because you can use it to fill in gaps, whether it's a rubber mask with a seam or an appliance with a bad edge. It covers up those gaps and fills in the negative space. But it also has many other uses in its single element form as pros-aide. But when we make Bondo, you use pros-aide and cabosil, and the cabosil is a thickening agent that thicks it up into a thick paste. Shall we get started? So what you're going to need is a stir stick, a small cup, some cabosil, and some pros-aide. This is our bonder. This is our glue. It's got many uses, more than just making Bondo. You can make a paint with it that's flexible and doesn't crack by adding a little acrylic to your desired color. You can use it for gluing appliances to the skin. You can also use it for patching like we're going to do today. But the one thing you don't want to forget when you're making all this is your respirator.
Alright, so what Josh is going to do first is he's going to pour a little bit of pros-aide in his little cup here. Adding small amounts of cabosil. Now you'll see it start to bead up, but what you want to do is what Josh is doing now is he's really starting to thoroughly mix it into the cup. Scrape it along the sides. He's going to mash those bubbles down in, and you'll see that it starts to form a nice smooth paste. And there we are. And don't forget to take off your Vader mask, because you won't need it after this.
So now that we've made the Bondo, I'm going to show you a little bit of patching and how to use it. What we're going to start with is this mask. When you seam, you're trying to get rid of the line that was created by the two sides of the mold's closing. Now you'll see after the flashing's cut off, it leaves this line. So what you want to do is you want to carve a little channel where it was. So dig it out as much as you can, but now you're going to fill it in with the Bondo. And the reason that you want to carve the channel is because it's easier to cover an indented hole than try to cover something that's exposed. It will create a bump, and you'll really see it when you paint. However, on this side, if you go in and just fill in the gap, it'll be smooth surface and connect the two sides seamlessly. So what you're going to need is your Bondo, a little bit of water. What water does is it helps break it down and smooth it out. And the way you apply it is with a spatula or a stick, and once it's on, you smooth it out with a brush or a sponge and some water. So now let's take our Bondo. You just need a little bit to get started with, not a whole lot, and you want your spatula to be clean. So I'm going to try and clean this off a little bit. Right, so we're going to take a little bit, and you don't have too much time but enough, and you spatulate it in there, and you push it into the seam. Start to get your excess and bring it on down. And you can work in large portions. It doesn't have to be small portions. Try and get the whole area done at one time. So right now this does look a little sloppy, but that's where the water comes in. Right now we're just trying to fill in the gap. Now that we've gone a good half side of the top of the head, we're going to try and scrape off the excess from the sides and across the whole thing. And this is a very tedious process, and if you take the time to do it right and give it some love, it's going to come out really good. Also, it dries clear, so you can tint this with a little acrylic paint to whatever color you want, but we're going to paint this mask afterwards, so I'm not too worried about this being clear. Now, at this point, we're going to take our brush or our sponge, and I'm going to start with a sponge, and I'm going to dip it in some water. Because the reason I'm using the sponge is it has a flat surface that I can come in here and soften all this up and work out some of the glue that's in the sculpting line that creates the texture. You don't want to lose your texture, you just want to fill in these gaps. So now you can see how it's taken away all the excess I had and making that nice and smooth and parallel to the other side of the mask. And you want to keep on working it on down the line. Another good thing about the sponge, since it does have a straight edge, if you're worried about losing your texture and your detail, you can take it and draw it back in with the edge. Okay, so it's been about 20 minutes and our seam is dry. In the meantime though, we covered up our CaboPatch because it will dry while you're waiting for your other layers to dry. It's pretty expensive material, so you don't want it to go to waste. Now let's move on to the next layer. Now you can see that there's still some white. When it's completely dry, it'll be translucent. But the top layer is dry enough for us to go in with our next layer. Now I've got a new spatula because it's clean, and here we go. I'm going to scrape some of that excess and use it and bring it on down. And this is the layer that you want to throw in your detail in. So once we get it kind of cleaned up, we're going to go back and throw in those sculpt lines back into the pros-aide because they'll dry in there and they'll make it look a little less flawless, like there's no seam when you have those lines back in. Okay, so now that I've repatched this, we're going to get the excess off and go back in with our brush and re-sculpt in these lines, because all that CaboSil, all that Bondo will fill that in and you're going to lose all your detail. And what you want to do is bring that back to make a uniform line going all across the seam, and it'll appear as there has never been a seam. So let's clean this up a little bit with some water in your sponge. So dip your sponge in the water and start working away the excess. Bring it towards the center. And then up. Get a little more water, starting to get dry. Now this process could take 3 times. It depends how perfect you want it to be. In some cases, there would be hair here. This is the top of the head. This particular character is a Nosferatu character, and there's a bald character, so you want this to be really clean. So once you've smoothed out most of the pros-aide, what I like to do is come in with the brush, dip it in some water, and work the glue out of the texture, out of the sculpted lines. Now that this is done pretty well cleaned up, what we're going to do is it's going to need like 5 to 10 minutes to dry depending on the temperature outside. But the one thing about the CaboPatch is it shrinks, so you're going to have to do this twice. Like right now it looks perfect, it looks perfectly level and plain to the both sides. Once it dries, it's going to be beveled in. So we're going to repatch it until it's straight. So this is a mask we created in appreciation to Left 4 Dead. We're big gamers over at Synapse FX, but I wanted to use it to show you an example of what a good patch job can do to create a seamless edge. So if you look, right along here, up the ear, and up to the top of the head was the seam, but you can't see it now because I filled it in with the CaboPatch / Bondo, and then once it painted, it disappears. So I hope you enjoy this tutorial, and let me know if you have any questions. So that's a little practical use for Bondo. There are many other uses. If you want to know what they are, let us know. We can give you another tutorial on how to use Bondo. We've got a good one coming up about 3D transfers, and it's with using Bondo and how to make transfers that are like a fake tattoo. That one's going to be really cool, so stay tuned.
Action.
So what we're going to need is a stir stick. You mix, like I was saying earlier.
Action.
So today we're going to teach you how to make some
Let's
Bondo.
start that over, dude.
1, 2, 3, 4. So today we're also used. Okay, I'm gonna start again. Also, CaboPatch. So today, okay.
Action.
So now that we've made the Bondo, alright, you're going to pour a little bit of karo syrup, depending on how much you need. I'm going to put the red in first. So we got a pretty good looking red going, right? And what's good about something dark like this is that it's opaque.
It's looking like it's nice and thick.
And how you can use the blood gel, you can get some up on the skin.